Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Thank you for tuning in to my show. Uh, Today I wanted to go ahead and mention first things first, Jan is expecting a visitor. So if the doorbell rings on her side, she will be stepping away momentarily, but she will return thereafter. Um, Yesterday on her channel, Jan from New York City Saves Money, she happened to talk about being a single mom in the 1980s. Well, being a child, a preteen, and a teenager of the 1980s, it kind of sparked something in my mind. Hey, why don't I go ahead and describe some of the memories as to what it was like for me in the 1980s? So, let's see. Uh, Jan, nice to have you. I'm glad that you were able to.
Thank you so much. Nice to be here. Hello, everyone.
Um, okay, so let's see. Where do I start in the 1980s? Because there's so much was there. I do remember, back in the 1980s, like I'll just start here, in a video game sense, you didn't have, well, the closest thing you didn't have, all the fancy schmancy video games like you do now. They weren't as nearly as advanced. The only thing I remember back in those times was the Atari 2600, the Activision, and then came the Atari 5200, the 7800. Then you had the original Nintendo around the mid 80s with the gun. But the video games and things were not anywhere near as advanced as they are now. Um, you know, but me, I never really had an Atari. So if I wanted to play a video game, I would have to go to like an arcade, put a quarter in or whatever and, play the game. Um, of course, I enjoy going to the arcade because I really liked playing pinball. That was a lot of fun.
Nice.
And, yeah. So let's see. What are some of your memories?
Okay,
Uh,
thank you for asking. I was just thinking, and this is like beyond this, first of all, you could have been my student, number one.
mhm,
I was a teacher in the 80s, and you're the generation that I taught. But
mhm.
on a personal note, and I bet my former students wouldn't believe this, but my daughter believes this because we used to do this. Speaking of the arcade games, you will not believe my favorite game. I used to do this after school. If any of my students saw me doing it, they would go, "What?" Road blasters.
I remember that. I remember Road Blasters. That was a fun one.
Can I
Yeah,
tell you?
yeah.
Yeah, can I tell you? My daughter got it for me for Mother's Day in the early 90s.
Oh, wow.
That's what I wanted.
I do. That's actually a game I had forgot about. I've played that in the past. There was a lot of activity in that one. That definitely was not a boring game. You definitely had, you know.
And you can find it on YouTube because 1 month ago I was craving the game and I looked for it. You can find various videos of people that have played it. It's, on a pre-record format. And I'm like watching these experts play it. I'm like, it was mind blowing. It brought back so many
Mhm,
memories.
mhm,
So
mhm.
fun. Of
Yeah.
course, the music, Steve, the music, the 80s.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Huh. When you think about, the through the times of the 80s, you had your post disco, the bleed over from, the disco, and then of course your new wave music started. And then of course you had your artists that crossed over from the 70s into the 80s, like Journey and Daryl Hall and John Oates and
True.
Kansas and, just to name a few. Um, Styx was another one that crossed over. But you had several um, groups, that crossed over. And but yeah, the music, and that's why I tell people all the time, and I truly to this day believe it. It truly was the last real decade for music because you didn't really have to worry about the profanity. Well, that came later, with the hip hop
Yeah,
and the rap and everything, which
yeah,
killed music altogether.
sure.
Um, but no, it was all clean. It was fun music to listen to. It was melodious, good lyrics. I mean, that was even a time when the artist still sat down and wrote out words
That's
and wrote
right.
music, not
Loved by
like you do
Def
now.
Leppard, right, Steve? Loved by
Yes,
Def Leppard.
Def Leppard. Yes, he's the hysteria and the pyromania. Um, and of course, when it comes to music, let us not forget it was also the starting point of a music video.
You're not kidding.
Again, you and I, and of course, we've talked off and on in the last few years. We have definitely lived parallel lives. I used to love MTV,
Yes.
Nina Blackwood, Martha Quinn, you know, um,
Right.
I can't think of the other guy's name, but anyway, Nina
Oh,
Blackwood,
Loader was the last name. Loader.
Kurt, Kurt Loder, but he
Kurt
came a
Loder.
little later. He came a little. Oh, Mark Goodman was another one. He was the one that had the black curly hair.
Yeah.
And then there was a black guy named Jackson. I can't think of his first name, but
Yeah.
I think he's deceased now. But he was on there. But yeah, I remember all of the through the times. Kurt Loder, like you
I
mentioned,
couldn't wait to get home from whatever job I had. And my daughter could attest to this. Come on, Donna, let's go watch MTV. I mean,
MTV.
she was like a little girl, and then I'm screaming, I want my MTV. She's running around, I want my MTV.
And then if you remember back around the mid '80s, Dire Straits had a song called Money for Nothing. And what is the opening line? I want my MTV.
There you go. Bingo.
So, but yeah, it's such fun times.
The fashion was a rip. I have to find that picture. I was in the Poconos on a on a gifted vacation resort, and I was so comfortable in the cabin lodge, and I have my knees drawn up to my chin on the sofa, sporting with my feet pointing this way, my bright pink shoes, and my polka dotted pink and white socks. Then, do you remember like perms were like really popular? I had my hair wild.
Yes, I do. I remember the perms and the
That was
hairspray
me. I had a one
and
feathered earring. I don't know if I was wearing the feathered earring. You remember when girls were wearing one feather down, like on one side?
yeah. Yep. I mean, speaking of earrings, of course, that was also the decade of the big earrings as well.
Yes, of course.
Lots of hairspray, lots of volume. The
Lots of
perm.
pink. Everything seemed to be pink.
Yeah, pink pastels.
Remember
Of
the
course,
neon socks? Did you have the neon socks?
I
I had the
think I did.
neon lime green socks.
I think I might have for a short period. I can't remember.
Well, the girls also wore a lot of white capezios. That was the thing.
Yes. Yeah, and then of course, speaking of television, of course, Miami Vice comes on, and then everybody likes Don Johnson's wardrobe. Then all the boys have to go out and start dressing like Don Johnson with the pastel blues and the orange so then all the boys wear the Don Johnson getup. About as close as I came to the Don Johnson getup as I did for a while wear shoes without any socks. That's about as because he didn't wear socks with his shoes if you think back, but yeah.
Pants the guys were wearing Dockers.
No, Bugle Boy.
That's the one. Okay.
And then, of course, if you remember back in the '80s, the boys and the girls liked to take their bottom at the the bottom of their pants. And what they would do is they would pull it and fold it over and tuck it up.
We all did it. Straights. Remember the straights, and then you'd roll them up.
Yeah.
And then you wear, if you were a woman, you'd wear heels, straights, rolled up. That was like the sexy look, you know.
Yeah. True. Yeah.
Let me tell you something. If I could go back to the 80s just one day, I would grab it in a New York heartbeat. It was a better
sure.
It was a better time. Didn't have other clutter going around. And that's all I'm saying on that matter. But for me personally, I loved it.
So did I. Yeah. You know, back then, this is a fun one, you know, on elaborating on the music is,
Sure.
you know, back then, if you didn't want to go out and buy the song or the record or CD or how, you know, of course, CDs was just coming out then. But, you know, everybody had a blank cassette in their cassette deck or whatever, boom box. And as soon as I heard the song come on the radio, to hit the record. And we would just record it off the radio. Sometimes we would miss a couple of seconds, but
I've done it too. You made your own, you know, mix together. It was so cool.
Mm-hmm.
Of course,
but then again,
the Walkman.
But the Walkman, I had that. I've even posted pictures of which Walkman I used to have once upon a time. I remember years back, the one that I had, it was a nice one. You know, my parents worked part-time. You know, they would do, you know, cleanup and things like that at a store. I believe still exists, but it's strictly mail order now. And I think they only focus on jewelry. But there used to be a store called Service Merchandise back in the day.
Yeah, yeah.
And I wanted a Walkman. So with my dad, you know, working at Service Merchandise, he was able to get a small discount. So I wound up getting this Sony Walkman with a 3-band equalizer. And I just played that thing to death. I would make my own. I would have some pre-record tapes, but I would make my own mixes from, you know, from records. I would record my own tapes, and then I would go out. If I rode around in the car with mom and dad, I would just put my headphones on and just play my own music.
That's amazing.
And I think, yeah, but I can't think of anybody that did not have a Walkman back then.
You're 100% right, Steve. You know what else I remember? Do you remember a concept called Photomat? Was that in your area too? Photomat was where you had the joy of dropping off if you took pictures. Instead of waiting days and days, they'd get it back for you in like an hour or maybe 2 hours. That was huge in the East. That I could tell you, Photomat.
I do remember. I don't know if I know it as Photomat or not, but I do know of where you could go and get film developed, and they were pretty prompt about it.
Yes.
So it might be the same thing.
It was a different name by you, yeah. Then they started making little huts, like little kiosks all over the place. It was just amazing how they popped up, how technology is the size of a cell phone. I mean, a cordless phone, Steve. The 80s.
Fat. Yes. Very fat, yeah.
Oh.
You know, you probably, you know, some of the technology that you have now, you had back then. And another thing I wanted to mention is you did have computers back in the 80s. They did. An Apple computer, from what I can remember, somewhere right around 84, 85, I do remember seeing them with my own eyes, an Apple computer that you have on a... They were pretty expensive. It was about $2,500 to $3,000 back then.
Absolutely.
Again, I didn't know anything about a computer. The only thing I knew about a computer is it was used at a bank
There you
to
go.
do transactions. That's all I knew.
Remember
But
WYSIWYG, and floppy disk, and all that funny stuff?
mhm.
I
I do,
Yes,
but I think now the floppy disk that I remember back then was flat.
yes,
It was about 6, maybe 7 inches, same in height, and it was
yes.
round in the middle, and you slipped it in this slot. Of course, as time went on later, 90s, 2000s, when you had the smaller floppy disk,
Smaller ones. That's right. Right.
but I do remember some of the computer technology. I know that when I was in school during that period, I know that I was introduced to the computer a little bit,
Right.
not a whole lot,
Absolutely correct. Yes. They were
but
starting that as an experiment where I taught in the pre-K and in the kindergarten. It was just like looked like a bunch of toys and the kids are just hanging out. It was just not taken that seriously.
yeah, yeah. But I was introduced to the computer. I think I would have had to have been probably in the fourth grade.
Right.
Again, people that bought computers for home use. I mean, I really don't know what you could have done with it. Like I said, maybe a subscriber who might know a thing or two. Um, I mean, I really don't know what a computer or the importance of a computer in a household back then if you couldn't get online. But
Right.
then again, somebody may say, well, but the only thing I can think, somebody might say, you can do your like your financial planning.
Right.
You can kind of like do your books on a computer. I guess you would just type it into
Right.
the memory, and that's about the only thing I can think of
And
that you could.
word processors, WYSIWYG.
Yeah, that's going back.
Right.
Yeah.
Remember
Um,
not Blockbuster, but mom and pop tape rentals for VCRs. I mean, renting a video was like so 80s, so 80s.
yeah, I remember VHS, which was pretty common with everybody.
Yes.
Of course, people might have forgotten about this one. You had Betamax.
Betamax was the preceded it.
Um, too bad that Too bad Betamax wound up falling through the cracks because personally I thought the quality of a beta was better than VHS, but
Yeah.
that's me.
No, I agree.
Uh,
It was better. I remember it.
yeah. Oh yeah, I remember having to go to the video store and rent the movie, and you come home and you watch it.
And be
Uh,
kind, don't forget to rewind.
oh yeah, they were bad about that. If you didn't rewind your tapes, they charged you a $2 or $3 fee.
Can't
They
blame
were
you.
they were bad about that. Yeah. I even remember back before we ever had a concrete actual VCR, there were places that Dad and I would go and you could actually pay and rent a VCR for like
Right.
3, 4,
Right.
$8 a day you could rent. Yeah.
Can I tell you a little story, Steve?
What?
There was a time that I was interested in collecting old magazines, okay? And a
Hmm.
friend of mine happened to show me a Look magazine from back in the 50s, and it was talking about our future. Now, this is the 50s talking about our future. Can you imagine being able to record your TV shows? And they were like leaning towards the beta idea, which was so
Hmm.
cool. Well, not only did we live to see that, we lived to see, I lived to see first time man on the moon and all this other stuff. And our history is just so important. I was joking about the cordless phones, the big and gawky, but I'm sure glad they had them. I would joke about like, the funny looking cell phones and, initially flip ones, all that. Are you kidding? They're still pretty darn good if you ever get one. Without those technology, we wouldn't have the things we have today.
No, because everything has to start out at a certain size,
Right.
and then as technology advances, everything got smaller. Um, Speaking of the 1950s, now this is a true and honest fact. I can't remember what magazine my dad read it out of. It was probably 1956, 57. I can't remember exactly the year. But not popular mechanic, popular science, or one of those. My dad read an article that many, many, many years later that technology would be down to the size of a thumbnail. If you stop and think about it, that technology actually came true. Think about your micro SD card that goes in your phones. That's
Exactly.
about a thumbnail size.
Correct.
So something he read, what, 65 years ago in a magazine came true.
Wow, it's amazing.
No, because, everything got smaller. You had a record, then you had your CD. I think 8-track started first. I hate to sound like I'm talking all over the place, but everything got smaller. Record became a CD, an 8-track became a cassette tape. Another technology that came out, and you're free to look it up on YouTube or Google, type in something called mini disc, MINIDISC. It's smaller than a cassette tape. On the inside, it looks like a miniature CD, and it's got a magnetic thing on the bottom of it, and you could record your music on it.
Wow.
I had a couple of those back in the 90s. Of course, it's obsolete technology now because everything with YouTube and Spotify and Pandora and all of your modern tap, 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 and then you've got your music.
Right.
That pretty much made that.
Well, here's a scary thing, Steve. You know that how much I love the band from the 70s, late 60s to be exact, Three Dog Night. I'm old enough to remember hearing the exact same song, okay, on vinyl, on 8-track, on 4-track, which is a cassette, okay, cassette. Then we went over to CDs, and now, of course, digitized.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm old. But the songs live in my heart. I love my Three Dog Night. I will always love them.
Yeah, they again, Chuck Nagrin and all of them.
Yes,
yeah, they were a good group, late 60s, early
but the
middle
80s
70s.
were an amazing, absolutely amazing decade, Steve. It's so nice that we were able to share it.
Yeah. Let me see here. I've got one comment 3 times. Living in the Moment says, "Hi y'all. Hi back. I'm glad you were able to get in on the live." Of course, she says it's amazing. It sure was. If you're talking about the decade, everything was phenomenal. TV, as we were talking about the music, just in general. And she says here, absolutely true things. Ha ha, the 80s and the 70s were the best. Yeah, they were. Now, I can't identify a whole lot with the 70s because I was born in 74, but I do remember
such a problem.
I mean, I do remember a little bit here and there, bits and pieces, not a whole lot.
But the music you remember, that I know from later on listening to it.
Yeah. I mean, there's a few songs from the 70s to this day that I still remember hearing, But the year that sticks out the most for me musically is 79. I mean, for some reason, that one.
That was a good year.
I mean, yeah. Even though this is an 80s segment, you want to talk about a year that had lots of transitions?
Well, it helped launch things into the 80s. That was important, that pivotal time.
Yeah, right, right, right. People think new wave music started in the 80s. No. Try late 70s.
Yes.
Um, Many may or may not know, people think of the group Devo, Devo. Everybody thinks of that song Whip It, you know. No, they go back they right, but they go back before that. Go back to the 70s,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
They were one of the ones that started new wave. One of the I actually know the foundation point of what started new wave music altogether. And I've posted it many times. It's a song called Our Friends Electric by Two Boy Army, which Gary Newman had a solo career after that, and then but but yeah, 1979 you had so many transitions. The new wave, the post disco, you know, and then everything kind of slowly moved over. And then, like I was saying, your rock groups, Styx, Journey,
Yeah.
Kansas, Boston, all of those crossed over, into the 80s as well. Because I don't know, because again, when music transitioned in the 80s as well, it was kind of hard for some of your older 70s groups to hang on because you're going from a rock decade to a
Yeah.
pop decade.
Yeah.
The 80s was the 80s was really more of a pop decade than it was rock.
And don't get me
80s,
started on TV, but go ahead.
right. The 70s was drums and guitar.
Right.
The 80s was more keyboardish, more synthesized.
True.
Um so but they did well. I mean, I remember, listening to those, 70s groups that crossed over.
I think certain
Uh
foods came out of the 80s, like tater tots. I think tater tots were born in the 80s. What do you think?
I do too. I do too. Of course, let us not forget the old motto, "Where's the beef?" from Wendy's.
Oh, yeah.
Um, let's see. Living in the moment, she says, I would love to go back to the 70s. It was a very peaceful time for me. Yeah,
Yeah.
like I said,
It's
I
really
don't.
an idea.
You could identify better because
I was a
that was your.
teenager in the 70s. It was fun. It was a lot of fun being a teenager in the 70s. I especially loved being a preteen in the early 70s in music. My favorite year of music. Steve, what's my favorite year of music in the 70s? I bet you know
The
of.
if All right, I should know this pretty well. I would say that your favorite year of music, I believe, was 72.
Yes! 1972, specifically the months of January, February, and March of 72. I know we're alluding for a second beyond the age, just 1 second.
Right, right.
Those 3 months were amazing for music. Look up the hits from that time and you will agree. But the 80s, amazing, so amazing in so many aspects.
Yeah, now in the 70s, again, my music tastes are so eclectic. I mean, as you
Yeah,
know, but
I
if
do.
I don't have a specific year in the 70s that I like. Now, again, everybody's different. I mean, 72 was good, as you mentioned. Um,
Great to be 12.
but I guess, okay, what I'm about to mention has to do with what Living in the Moment just wrote. Um, yeah, she remembers Devo with the red pots on their heads. Yeah, that was true. But she wrote here, I was very much into disco music in the 70s. Okay.
Yep.
Um, I don't have a specific year in the 70s that I do like music, but I would have to say I liked music the best probably between 74 and 77.
Oh, yeah.
The only reason why I say that is I liked the disco, in quoting your words, I liked it just before it became too can spammy.
You remember my phrase?
And what caused disco to become toucan spammy is Saturday Night Fever. That
It
kind
did.
of, you know, and then of course a few months later, hey, let's get Donna Summer, the Commodores, and all these different people. Let's come out with another disco movie. Let's do Thank God It's Friday. Um, I don't know. Maybe if they would have waited a little while longer to put out Thank God It's Friday, maybe disco would have had a little bit more of a chance. You can't say that. There's no telling. Um, maybe I should have specified this video as my memories of the 70s and the 80s growing
Well,
up,
you could
because
switch your
I
title.
I mean, I really don't mind discussing the 70s. Like I said, I was very small at the time. Um, but yeah, that's those would be my my years of music. Probably the year of birth for me, probably up until 77. I mean, don't get me wrong, I did like 78, 79. You had some good songs then too. But 78 is also when disco became the ish, or all of that. It
Yeah.
became so, and that kind of, put it in a different realm altogether. But um, you know, it was a 70s was a fun time from what I can remember. 80s was phenomenal. Like you, I would go back one day.
Okay.
Um, of course, if I had to go back one day at my age now, knowing what I know, Um, there's a lot of things I would want to accomplish in a 24-hour period.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And then I could jump back in a time machine, like Back to the Future, and beam
Right.
forward back to today. Um,
But I would like to be Janet at not 62 and a half, which I am presently, but I want to be Janet, the girl in my 20s again, back
again,
in the 80s, with my loved ones that are no longer. I mean, there's a lot more to the story. Um,
sure,
my daughter, a little girl, kids get married, they have their own lives. You love them to pieces. You wish them the best. They're always your child. But life changes, and then you become a grandma, which I wouldn't trade for the world. I mean,
right.
just to go back and just like look around, it's like you don't appreciate things as much sometimes until you're on top of the mountain and you're looking down from far away.
Down, right. Um, let's see. Living in the moment. Again, thank you for tuning in. I really appreciate it. She says, "Oh my goodness, I love Donna Summer." Yeah, she's probably my top favorite
Absolutely.
female artist. I was very crushed when I found out she passed. And thank God it's Friday. Yeah, yep. Um, I even know who sang the song. It's Love and Kisses. If anybody feels you want to go look it up and listen to it. But um, yeah, I just what we would all love to do. It sounds like the three of us, love to jump back into those times. I would probably want to go back to those times, the 80s. Uh, at my age now, 46, headed toward 47. Yeah,
You
but
old
I would.
man, you.
No, 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 no. That's just it. I don't. With what happened to me, I feel like I have aged about 35 years, though. But um, I would say I would want to go back to those times, probably about 30. You know,
Which is
28,
about
30.
5 minutes ago for you.
I guess.
All right.
Um,
Oh, Steve. Can you imagine? What time is it? Wow.
11:10.
And we've been on 34 minutes.
Yeah, a little bit
Amazing.
longer than what I was expecting, but I, at this point, I can't really think of any more to really
Right.
discuss or talk about when it comes to, the 1980s. I just know that, all three of us here would just love to go
And
back and
anybody watching on playback, it'll be a lot of fun. Like when I watch your show again, to see if anybody can remember some really cool memories in the comment section of if they were around in the 80s, whatever they remember, that'd be really a lot of fun.
Hmm.
check that out. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. Let's see. Yeah. Another comment from Living in the Moment. She says, I love most all of music of the 80s now. Me too. Now, I will say this music in the 80s toward the latter 80s, like 88, 89, it transitioned again. You had your hip hop. Um, that's not so bad. It got worse, like early middle 90s when everything became more profanity based, which I didn't like. But you give me your rap groups like or hip hop like Run DMC or Houdini or Grandmaster Flash, the earlier stuff that was clean, that didn't have any vulgarity to it or any cussing.
Yeah.
Because there was a period in the early middle 80s when rap and all that was coming out. Even Blondie originated rap. If you think back to the song Rapture, she did a song called Rapture in like 1981. And if you listen to the lyrics, she's rapping in the song. You eat Cadillacs, Lincolns too, Mercuries and Subarus, and don't stop to punk rock. So she's rapping in the song.
Yeah.
But actually, when I think back a little bit further, coming back to 1979, the first rap song, if I remember, was called Rapper's Delight by the Sugar Gang. You'd have to look it up and listen to it. It's
Yeah,
pretty good.
probably. Yeah.
But I honestly can't think of much more to say.
And we're
I
going to
mean,
leave it there because unfortunately I have to meet someone and I have to, I have like a lot to do before I do. So they didn't
yeah.
ring the bell yet. So I might end up just meeting them.
Well, that's a good thing, actually. And I think I have
And
a
I'm
feeling.
so sorry, but we just leave the rest for the viewers. Which is so sweet. And, in the time that we're always reminiscing the negative stuff, let's reminisce the good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for having me on your show.
Oh, absolutely. It's been fun. You're welcome. Like I said, I hadn't done a live in a while, so I figure I go ahead and put one up. What the heck? So, all right, Janet. Like I said, we'll probably get together again in the not too distant future, or I can be on one of your shows
Oh,
at
I
some
know
point.
when. Real soon.
Okay, that works for me. All right. Yeah. All right, everybody. Living in the moment. It is fun to go down memory lane.
Nice to see
70s
you,
music
Tracy.
was for dancing, but 80s was for driving and listening. Perfect for a long. Yeah, yeah. Now there was some 80s music. It's a whole other story. Now there was some 80s music that you had out there that was definitely club and dance floor based. That's another story altogether. But you did have your dance songs even back in the 80s. And of course, we all owe homage to good old disco for that. Okay. Thank you for tuning in. It's been fun, and hopefully we will do this in the near future again at some point.
Bye
You
bye,
just never.
everybody. Thank you so much.
Bye. Thank you.